everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast and the fourth weekly overlook, I think. Earlier today there was a slight risk for the southern tip of Florida and the Florida Keys, but that has since diminished as the front has moved out of the area. But there is still a slight risk and a marginal threat for the eastern part of the United States. It does look like the slight risk was like squished. I think it was around this big. It was around as big as the marginal threat was. I think it could have actually. Now that I think about it, I don't think it changed sizes at all. But there still is a slight risk for the eastern part of the United States, much of the eastern coast of North Carolina and parts of northern South Carolina and what looks like to be the southern mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. There is a threat for the possibility of a brief tornado associated with this system. A very small possibility of a brief tornado, as well as the potential for damaging winds and the potential for I'm guessing maybe 0.5 to 1 inch size hail, or maybe even 1.5 inches of hail. But I don't think it's going to exceed that. I think it's unlikely that it's going to get into the sizes of 2 inches. But if we switch to the pivotal weather models, you can see that for today, that front has moved out of the area and is moving up north through much of the eastern United States. And I'm assuming that most of this area here is going to see the potential for lots of rain, mostly rain, not really much of a tornado threat outside of the area that you saw, as well as the possibility for hail and damaging winds. Mainly just the possibility for strong wind gusts, not so much hail. Maybe the possibility for a pea-sized hail to maybe dime-sized hail, but it's likely that it won't exceed that or as well as maybe even not have all that much of a potential for hail outside of the risk that was being predicted. But if we let's go into a more zoomed in view here. Let's go into regional for the mid-Atlantic, and let me switch. Okay, nope, I'm already on a high resolution model. You can see that much of where the tornado threat was being forecasted, there's the potential for isolated systems as it continues eastward. It's more isolated than organized into one big line, and you can see the potential for as well a large hail possibility for large hail, and maybe even the possibility for large hail as well down through South Carolina associated with this system, and maybe even large hail with areas like this. The threat for hail is mostly isolated throughout the threat, but you can see that in front of the low pressure system here, there's a low pressure system sitting across most of the northern eastern United States, slowly moving eastward. It's very slow though, and it's gonna bring. I'll show you what it's gonna bring later, but you can see as it continues eastward, it's going to eject a band of what looks to be isolated rain showers. And that's going to continue eastward and then mostly get absorbed into the Appalachian Mountains here and likely not pass it. And seems after the severe weather from the low pressure system, the outer bands get out of this area. It seems like anywhere east of this slide is most likely going to not really get the potential for any more severe weather for today or tomorrow. I think, yeah, mostly tomorrow too. Mostly the lack of severe weather potential for tomorrow east of the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia, and probably northern North Carolina too, as it's being blocked off by the Appalachian Mountains. So it's potentially going to be pretty low level too, low-lying showers. The potential for low-lying showers ejected from the low-pressure system here in front of the rotation. It is a rotating low-pressure system. It's a low-pressure cyclone, or whatever technical term you call it. I don't really know the technical term for rotating low-pressure system, but you can still see the isolated shower threat in front of that for most of the New England area on Monday. Again, it's mostly going to just be a shower threat, mostly just rain threat, and even into Tuesday for most of the New England area. Spotty showers that should happen on and off for most of the New England area, but more organized mostly in this area here. It's going to be more organized, more embedded in just bigger blobs of showers for the northeastern United States, west of the Appalachian Mountains, and into the New England, and not really much into the New England area. Mostly in just this area of Michigan, Indiana, down through Kentucky, and probably western Ohio and West Virginia here, as well as the ejected isolated showers that were ejected in front of the system. But it seems by tomorrow, the upper level system the upper level showers, the organized showers, do make it past the Appalachian Mountains into Virginia again, bringing the potential for rain again into Virginia by Tuesday. It looks like. Let's go out of the more zoomed in view here. Let's go to a national view, and then let's also switch to a GFS model so I can be able to actually forecast for the rest of the week. But it looks like that cyclone, that rotating low pressure system, is going to stay over that area for most of the week. Actually, it looks like the rain threat really diminishes after Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, where it clears up a lot. But as for temperatures associated with that low pressure system and the cold front that just passed through all that, if we go to temperatures here, you can see that cyclone. Okay, let's give it a minute to load. Actually, you can see that cyclone here. You can see the cyclone here in the northern eastern United States, dropping temperatures really in the night across most of the New England area, northern eastern United States, even down to even Tennessee, and maybe even northern Alabama, the northern deep south, and what looks like most of this area really of the northern Midwest, as far south down to Arkansas, dropping temperatures down to the low 40s and 30s across most of that area because of that at night mostly, and especially really cold temperatures, freezing temperatures in the New England area, northern eastern United States, throughout here. It seems to warm up. It seems to begin to warm up by Thursday is when it seems to start warming up across the northern eastern United States. But in the day, it's still reaching what looks like the low 40s for most of the eastern United States, northern eastern United States. But then dropping down to 40s and 30s and possibly maybe even below freezing temperatures in the New England area, especially mostly in this area of the Appalachian Mountains and New England area, and maybe even Michigan below the above this line mostly. Potentially the potential for below freezing temperatures at night. Again, starting to warm up by Thursday and Friday. As for the rest of the United States towards the Midwest, if we switch back over to our composite reflectivity, you can see, actually no, I have more to cover on that cyclone there. Let's not switch gears just yet. You can see that the potential for severe weather in that cyclone there is going to be pretty low. It's mostly just going to be rain showers with that cyclone there. As you can see, there's hardly any instability at all. Hardly any large amounts of instability, allowing for the potential for hail or damaging winds, really. Or actually, no. I'm gonna go back on what I said about damaging winds. If we go back over to the low-level winds, the lower low-level winds, you can see that there is strong low-level winds associated with this cyclone along this trough here. That could potentially bring some strong wind gusts with the cyclone as it's continuing across the eastern United States. Let's go back to where am I wanting to go back to? Let's go back to humidity. Actually, let's go to humidity because I showed you the instability in the atmosphere being pretty low for that system, not really giving the threat for hail or much of a tornado threat at all. It's mainly just going to be rain. It's more than likely just going to stay rain threat. But then you can see in that area there where that cyclone is, it's pretty dry. Not very humid at all, really. It stays pretty dry, really. And it starts to become more humid again by Friday and Saturday, with still small amounts of humidity, but more than what the cyclone was giving it. And then later into next week too. But let's go back to the eastern United States. If we go to the instability for the Midwest, the Midwestern United States, you can see that all that severe weather, the large amounts of severe weather tornado potentials from the past few days that were in this area have moved into the Gulf of Mexico, continued into Florida, and is going out into the Atlantic Ocean, likely to bring a rain potential to Europe as it continues eastward. But you see that there is there's low amounts of instability across most of the most of the Midwest. Relatively low instability too across a lot of the Midwest. Really only reaching what looks to be maybe 2000s across a lot of the eastern United States, and that increases later into the week, as you can see large amounts of instability across again eastern Texas again. So it doesn't really look like the Midwest or eastern Texas is really going to get much of a break just yet from severe weather. But I'll show you why it's probably not going to be as intense and as big as a tornado potential, if any tornado potential really, for most of the Midwest. Because if we go to the wind shear, the shear in the atmosphere, the wind shear, across most of the Midwest, there is relatively weak wind shear for most of the week. Maybe a couple spots where there are some strong wind shear areas, but also so it's really going to lessen the potential for tornadoes because of the relatively low amounts of wind shear. But if we go to the low-level winds, you can see that there are relatively weak low-level winds across much of the Midwest for much of the week. Currently, you're looking at Thursday, and you saw that there was barely, not really much of anything, because all of it's being brought along with this trough here, continuing eastward very slowly. With it's not really reaching into much of the Midwestern United States, and that continues eastward. But then you can really see that there's going to be very low amounts of low-level winds. But you see the potential for strong amount, spotty potential, more isolated potential for low-level winds in some areas across the Midwest, continuing this week. And you saw there, again, very isolated potential for strong low-level winds. And if we go back to wind shear, let's take a look at wind shear again. If we look at wind shear, you can see still low amounts of wind shear for much of the Midwestern United States, but you can see the potential for maybe possibly stronger isolated wind shear in some areas of the United States, and especially in areas right here. And here, as I circled those two on the low-level winds area, on the low-level winds model too. So it looks like because of the relatively low amounts of wind shear and low-level winds, it's not really going to have much of a strong tornado potential for the Midwest this week because of the low-level winds, because of the lack of low-level winds and strong wind shear. But if we go back to dew point, let's go to dew point. You can see today, really, there's not really all that much of strong humidity. But by tomorrow, you can see that the strong humidity for eastern Texas does return. Does return to the Midwest, continuing northward as it goes further into the week, really stretching across most of the Midwest by Wednesday and Thursday, especially Thursday and Friday. You can see that there was strong humidity, especially in the later days of the week. So with the instability and humidity, there's still the potential for severe weather to develop, and maybe the potential for maybe the potential for hail. But it's mostly going to be an isolated threat because there's not a strong dry line or a trough moving through to organize those storms into a line. So it's going to be mostly an isolated threat. But you can see, I'll show you the areas that are likely, not really likely, but still have the potential, the areas that could potentially have the potential to produce tornadoes. But not really tornadoes all so much, mainly just the potential for rotating supercells. I think that the potential for tornadoes this week is likely to be pretty low, but still the potential for isolated severe thunderstorms across much of the Midwest because of the sufficient humidity and instability. But again, the lack of low-level winds and wind shear decreasing the tornado threat for much of the Midwest. Let's look at composite reflectivity. I'll show you how the threat is mostly isolated. You can see isolated supercell, or not supercells, but isolated thunderstorms developing across the Midwest in some areas, mostly in Kansas and Texas, especially on Thursday. Thursday has I think Thursday and Friday, likely Thursday and Friday, have the strongest potential for severe thunderstorms to develop across the Midwest. You can see isolated severe thunderstorms developing through Kansas, or not Kansas, but southern Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, continuing eastward and bringing the potential for rain to the southern eastern United States again in a more organized system, continuing eastward, bringing the potential for rain. I don't really think that there will be much of a hail threat with that either. I can confirm that though if I look at the well, that's the rate that is mostly expected by Friday and Saturday as those storms move eastward. But so with that in mind, I now have a date to look for where I should look for instability. You can see not really much, but yeah, not terribly much, if any at all. Really, just very small amounts of instability going eastward across the United States. With that system, very small amounts of instability. So it's mostly just going to be rain, in not really a hail threat or damaging wind threat, just rain continuing eastward by Friday and Saturday due to the storms in the Midwest. I can tie it all together by let's go to HRR again because I have significant tornado parameter, and I can show you where I'm expecting the potential for tornadoes to possibly develop. You can see that there could potentially be a small tornado development threat for eastern Texas on Monday of next week, it looks like. So I'll likely cover the threat for severe weather again on the I will cover the threat for severe weather next week on the next weekly overlook. You see that pretty much the entire week there is almost no significant tornado parameter. Actually no, because this is that's Monday of this week. Because I'm on HRR, I gotta remember that this is likely to be very, very tiny. I don't really think that there's going to be a terribly large potential for tornado development on Monday by Monday tomorrow through eastern Texas. It's likely to be very tiny. There could be the potential for a broad rotating isolated supercell, and if there is going to be a tornado, it's likely to just be very, very brief and short-lived, and just overall the potential for tornadoes is pretty low going into most of the week. So with that in mind, I likely won't go live for this week because of the low threat for severe weather and tornadoes. Well, they're in large hail, and so I mean, there with the instability and the instability and humidity, the instability could be sufficient enough for the potential for maybe small hail, not really the potential for large hail. If there's going to be any hail at all, I think it's likely to be from half an inch to an inch and a half, or maybe that could be a bit of a stretch too. I think hail is likely to be small for the severe thunderstorm potential across the Midwest this week. So I likely won't go live this week due to the decreased threat for severe weather, and I will. If we look at the storm, actually, I have two more things to show you before I end the forecast. Let's look at the next few convective outlooks for day 2. For tomorrow, you can see that there's not really much of a threat at all. There's no marginal, no slight. It's going to be relatively calm. Just mostly the potential for rain showers across the eastern United States with that cyclone I showed you, and the potential for rain showers across the western United States, and no tornado, wind, or hail threat, as well as day 3, just a large. It's just a large TSTM risk for rain showers across the western United States. So on Monday, you all know that I have trouble trying to get forecasts out on Monday due to personal stuff, specifically on Mondays. and because of the very low threat for severe weather on Monday, I will likely not create a forecast on Monday, but I will create a forecast on Tuesday. Because I try to do one every day, even if the severe weather threat is tiny. But it's probably not going to be very extravagant the next few days this week. But again, I do want to mention that because I am looking at weather so far into the week, so far later into the week, the models do have the potential to change and have an increase of potential for strong severe weather. The models are subject to change, and I will update you guys with forecasts this week. And but again, I likely won't go live. So now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator. And I will hopefully I probably won't see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.